Good afternoon, everyone. Try this again. They gave me the last slot of the day. Everyone's energy is so high. Let's try again. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Cox. Connected and moving. My name is Brian Larkin. I work at the Center for Community Progress. By show of hands, who has never heard of the Center for Community Progress before? First time hearing about it. Good. So, for everyone who did not have their hand raised, I apologize. You're gonna hear stuff you've heard from me a million times. So the Center for Community Progress is a national nonprofit that was founded in Michigan. It was founded in Genesee County in 2010 to help deal with issues of vacancy, abandonment, and deterioration. And what we're really known for is helping communities across the country start land banks. We've helped establish the enabling legislation that happens in each state, and so I'll go through those pieces today. In my role, I work as the director of the National Land Bank Network. We support the over 300 land banks that are around throughout the country. We do conferences, events, trainings, and different things of that nature. I'll give you a preview of my last slide. Our national conference is going to be held this year in Michigan. So I'm really excited about that. Our National Land Bank Network Summit is going to be in Detroit, September 8th and 9th. And so for this conversation, we'll be going through explaining what land banks are. And I am really just not even the appetizer. You know how when you go to the nice restaurant, they give you a little thing to wash your hands or something? That's me. I'm getting you guys ready because Hope and Krista are going to provide really tangible conversations about this is what land banking looks like in this part of the community, in this part of the state. In our community, land banking on the ground, this is what it's really like. I'm here so we have a general conversation about what we're talking about. So I mentioned the Center for Community Progress was founded to help deal with issues of vacancy. And not just any sort of vacancy. Vacancy in and of itself is not a problem. If someone moves out of a house and a couple months later someone else moves in, that's not a problem that needs a huge intervention. But systemic vacancy is different. Systemic vacancy is when you can look at a map in your community and point to the area where the vacant properties are going to be, where they chronically occur. That's something more than just market functioning normally. And what we have here are different triggers that are going through to make it difficult to accomplish the goals of what we want to have with vital neighborhoods. Oftentimes, some of those are financial challenges, access to banking, environmental challenges, different things that lead towards this environment. Once you get to that place, though, once you're at a place of systemic vacancy, it's entrenched in the actions of the individuals, in the actions of the banking community, in the actions of the housing community, and your municipalities. And so land banking as a strategy is one to help kind of disrupt that and help unlock properties that are stuck and get them back into productive use. So a land bank is a public authority focused on the conversion of vacant, abandoned, and tax delinquent properties into productive use. If you ever look at any work that we have at the Center for Community Progress, you'll see the acronym VAD for VAD. That's vacant, abandoned, and tax delinquent properties. That's our bucket word for everything blight, everything trouble, everything problem. So if you're talking about bad properties, talking about the problem properties in your community. And now, Emily, I know it probably has come up a million times today already, but will these slides be available for individuals?
Yes, you should already have them in your inbox.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So if you need anything up here, it should be available. If you have a question about something, you can feel free to ask me afterwards. One of my favorite slides when I talk about land banks is what land banks are not. There's a lot of misconceptions about land banking. Someone's like, oh, I want to build houses in my community. We need to start a land bank. Land banks can help build housing. Land bank's sole purpose is not just the construction. Like if you're looking to build housing, when we get to this later, we'll talk about what tools do land banks bring to your community. Financial institutions. Funny story. First started my first employment, and this is one of the first times I've had someone in the room who knew me at that time. Teresa from CEDM, who got a shout out earlier. 21 years old I was, working at a List AmeriCorps intern at the Genesee County Land Bank many moons ago, sitting at the front desk, answering phones. I had someone come in, and was, do you have a pen? Like, here you go. And was like, what's the date today? Told him the date. Very confused. I'm like, what is going on? Like, so I need to cash this. I was like, cash what? My check. This is a bank, isn't it? Okay, not that kind of bank. And the reason I bring that story is because not a lot of people know what land banks are. You're in a community, the words are familiar, you know what land is, you know what banks are. There's a lot of misconceptions about what land banks do. And even for people who have heard of them, there's a lot of misconceptions on how they work, how they get their powers, what are they supposed to do, and how can the community participate in land banking as an activity. Also mentioned get rich quick agencies and Rumpelstiltskin. The reason I say Rumpelstiltskin is because the acronym I mentioned earlier, VAD, VAD properties are properties that no one wants. That's the straw. The gold is what everybody wants to come out the other end. It's possible in Rumpelstiltskin to take it with no inputs and create that gold. Give me the straw, I got gold. That's not what happens in real life. In order to take these bad properties, there's a whole ecosystem that needs to be in there supporting the tools that the land bank has to turn it into the gold, the affordable housing, the open spaces, the green space opportunities, the things that really enhance our communities. So the earliest land banks in the country were around in the 70s and 90s, and they did very little, and they weren't kind of comprehensively organized. And then there was a big movement in Michigan that happened at the beginning of the 2000s, and it was really focused on what many communities saw as this oncoming onslaught of tax abandoned property, people walking away from properties, even before the large housing mortgage foreclosure crisis. There was tax collectors in certain parts of the state who saw some challenges, passed legislation to say, hey, let's find a way to get ahead of this. And so what are the land banks are for? Land banks are created to help deal with these challenges. Large number of bad properties, fragmented inventories, property with little market value, and restrictive public property disposition requirements. The last bullet is if a municipality wants to sell or give a property, and say we heard about some of the challenges that were in Benzie County. There was an example of a municipality having that property and they received it through their normal process, whether it's a foreclosure or kind of whatever. And their next step is, okay, well, we know our community goals is we have working families that we'd like to give this parcel to. You know, we have this home, we want to sell it to them. They can only afford $140,000. Well, in many communities, if you're dealing with public dollars, if you're a municipality, you have to sell it for the highest return you can get because you are utilizing public dollars for there. And so intuitively, it makes sense. Those are our tax dollars. You want them to get the greatest return on the investment so our dollars aren't going to waste. But for the community goals, that doesn't help us out if we're privileging outside investors, people who want second homes, and those sorts of challenges. Land banks come in because they can be flexible with who they're selling their properties to. Their alignment, in theory and in best practice, aligns with community goals. The goals of community, whether they're aligned with official plans, advisory community, advisory panel boards, just understanding the voice of community and leveraging this property for the greatest return for them. Where they get their property from, the majority of land banks across the country, especially looking back in the rearview mirror, got their property from the tax foreclosure pipeline. At a certain point in time, more than 80% of properties that were in land banks came through foreclosed taxes. Now, as we've seen, specifically since COVID, and we've seen property values go up all across the country, in every single market, that number is starting to decrease some, the percentage that are from there, but it still remains the largest source of property for land banks throughout. However, in this current time, land banks are really figuring out new ways in which to leverage their tools to accomplish the goals of their community. So where do these land bank powers come from? They come from enabling legislation that's at the state level. And so I'll show this map of Michigan. The blue counties here all have land banks established in them. We have 3 city land banks. Detroit was the first city land bank, and just within the past year, 2 more city land banks due to a change in state legislation started in Warren and Grand Rapids on this side of the state. One thing that is unique about Michigan, Michigan is the only state in the country where every single community is served by a land bank. And what we mean by that is, if you're in a blue county, If you're in a blue county, not that kind of blue. If you are in a county that has a land bank, you have your county land bank. If you're in a county that's depicted under here with the color gray, you are served by the state land bank. The state land bank authority has the ability to serve as the land bank for any county out there that is not established under a land bank. So that's really unique, and for individuals who are representing local government, if you maybe have one or two problem properties and would like to utilize the mechanisms of land banking, the state land bank supports in that place. When you have more of those, when you want kind of a sustained strategy and you're looking at your problem properties year over year that you want to leverage towards larger goals and kind of convening community around that, it's really more viable to establish a local land bank in your community. So where do those, where land banks, so this is a snapshot of land banks across the country. So to just kind of put it in perspective, what the field looks like as a whole. On average, they're dealing with the median property of about 40 properties. So we're talking about land banks are dealing with a couple of dozen properties on average. We have many that are larger. We have a lot that are smaller. But right in range there, land banking as a tool is one that's meant to be small and flexible and nimble. Not necessarily small, we'll say nimble and flexible and adapting to what's going on. They serve all sorts of areas. 58% serve urban areas, a quarter of land banks serve rural areas, and additional percentages outside of that. That's really important, and those are one of the figures that we always take when we're in national conversations, because we want to make sure the issue of land banking, while yes, the majority are in urban areas, this is not an exclusively urban challenge. And when we're developing solutions, when we're identifying resources, we're attracting funds, we want to make sure that rural components and other portions of our field are covered so that supports are going to all the communities that need it. This is a list of some of the activities that land banks engage in. And don't try to read all this. There's way too much text on the screen. But from property maintenance to vacant land stewardship, new construction, working with homelessness, climate change, foreclosure prevention happens. There's I think 4% said that's occurring activity, and I'm pretty sure all 4% of those are in Michigan because of the way Michigan Land Bank works, really looking proactively, looking up the line, and really being great stewards to their community as a whole. But one of the most important things is when people start a land bank, they say, well, how am I going to pay for it? Or they say the other thing, which is we want to start this land bank, and in a couple of years, we want it to fund itself. What do we say about Rumpelstiltskin? We're taking the bad properties in our community and we're turning them not to the highest financial return. We're not taking the bad and trying to get the most dollars out of it. We're taking the bad and trying to get the greatest community benefit. As a result, that model inherently isn't liquid, isn't going to be a place where it's just starting to fund itself. How would they support it? A portion of that, I would say that blue portion of the pie graph down there, pie chart down there, that's the portion of what land banks on average are receiving from the traditional real estate activities, selling the property, getting those back. It represents on average around a third of the revenue that comes into land banks. So in order for land banks to be viable and successful, there has to be buy-in from the community writ large. That orange section, we're looking at public dollars that are coming in over there. That yellow section, which is really reliable dollars that can build into your operations, tax recapture, work in those places, and then philanthropic support. There are other pieces that flow in there, but for land banking as a tool to be successful, you've got to have those orange, yellow, and other blocks in there to supplement. Otherwise, what your land bank is going to be forced to do is really focus on the low-hanging fruit that can get the greatest return financially, and your community is not going to get that great benefit that you wanted to land bank from, which is getting rid of the bad properties. And so last thing as I transition it to Krista is really want to plug this again. This year, the National Land Bank Network Summit is coming to Michigan. This is the largest conference in the country to support the field of land banks. We host it in person every other year. Our last one was held in Cleveland and had about 300 individuals. We're looking for almost 500 people that are going to be coming to Michigan this year, and so excited to show them all of the great work that the field is doing, all the great stories of land banking in the state that birthed the field of land banking that we have today. So I'll pass it over to Krista now, and we'll probably take on questions at the end.
Hey, everybody, I am Krista Trout-Edwards, and I am the director at the Calhoun County Land Bank Authority. I may have sent the wrong PowerPoint to you last night. It's not the right PowerPoint. I'm sorry, we have had a week at our land bank. I do have it with me.
Yeah.
One of the main things, as Brian mentioned, is that we do have a state land bank authority, and that state authority does serve all counties without a land bank. So how many folks in here live in a county without a land bank? Teresa, really? So the state land bank would be your partner, but they're also the partner to everyone with an existing land bank. We work together on various programs and grant dollars, and then just also education around land banking. So I cannot remember what I put on my slides last night, but the state land bank currently has outreach to land banks through grant dollars. And those are for stabilization, rehabilitation, demolition, and environmental impact dollars. So we're going to go over the statewide overview, the Michigan Land Bank Association, and then we'll talk a little bit about what our land bank does. So the state land bank works to foster property development within communities, and they do that by providing that technical assistance, but also by administering grant funds that land banks can pay or can apply for to do projects within their community. They partner with us to return land to productive use, and they serve as that land bank for non-land bank counties. So recently, we've had some significant funding coming through the state to land banks. And that's depicted here on this screen. There have been 4 rounds of blight elimination dollars. And historically, when we talked about blight, we talked about demolition only. But as Chris said, you can't demo your way out of this problem. So there needs to be other ways to address these buildings. And so we have been working on what blight means. And so blight to us means rehabilitation, stabilization of buildings so that they don't have to eventually be demolished. And then some of those environmental impact areas. In our county, we have the city of Battle Creek and we have the city of Albion. In Albion, that has a history of manufacturing, and there's some significant contamination in that community. So we were really wanted to include that as a definition of blight. I think the other thing that is really interesting about this funding is that it just doesn't pay for the program. You can actually acquire a structure to demolish it. You can pay for title work, which is really important in the foreclosure world because title is not always clean. And you can pay for boarding and securing. And to us, stabilization is really important because if we can get that roof on that house, then that house will have a longer lifespan. The project at the top is a duplex. I think it's a labor of love for our team. We have about 4 funding sources in it at this point, including the removal and reconstruction of that historic porch. So I hope you all are enjoying that. This is right by downtown, and it's a 3-bedroom duplex. It's a mirror image on both sides. So it was really important to us to try and save the structure because we knew that we couldn't rebuild it in this fashion. The one at the bottom, Save the Vista, that's from Marquette County up north. So what do they do besides this outreach and this education? Well, they work with us on policy application. So if there's a policy that's proposed around land banking or something that we think needs to change, they're a partner in that work. And then they also help with governing guidelines and documents to make sure land banks can get established. So if you're interested in starting a land bank, your first stop would be the State Land Bank Authority. They can come out, they can give you the how-to, they can talk to your leaders about why it's important and why it might work for your county. So I have 52 land banks in Michigan, Brian.
Oh, you have to do it.
So-
Well, we're the same. I have 51 counties.
Oh, 51 counties. Okay, so yeah, okay. Yeah, so there's 52, which is quite a lot in the last couple of years. And part of that is due to that funding that's been available at the state level. You know, funding a land bank is tricky. We've been around since 2007. We are not always funding us ourselves. And we only just recently expanded our staff to cover and assist with some of those grants coming through. So the other tool that's available for land banks or the land bank curious in Michigan is the Michigan Land Bank Association. They have just rebranded this to a nonprofit that's been going on for about a year and a half maybe. And because it was not set up maybe the way it should have been. So we just hired an executive director, actually from Benzie County, the former treasurer there. And then we have a part-time consultant that does a lot of outreach. And so this is where a lot of the member work happens. So we have a policy committee, we have an education committee, we have a finance committee. And they're all working to further the land bank mission and then identify areas where our land banks need help. So as a partner, they hold educational webinars, they connect land banks with resources. So we have a resource exchange. If you're going to do your first demo, you've never done a demo before and you need an RFP, this is where you could go as a member of the Michigan Land Bank Association. We also hold an annual summit for that peer-to-peer learning. And then we do this policy work, which is a significant part. The funding that I just talked about with the state land bank, that was a bunch of people working on it, but a lot of people in the Michigan Land Bank Association advocating for that funding. So there's two types of members. Land banks can be members, but we can also have associate members. So if you're in a community that is maybe curious about forming a land bank, but doesn't want to quite do it, you can become an associate member of the Michigan Land Bank Association, and you can attend those trainings and you can attend the summit, and you can bring those resources back to your community. So Oakland County actually did not have a land bank for a long time, but she's been a member of MAL for years. And when the political climate changed and they were able to form a land bank, they formed a land bank and they were already a member of MAL. So if you're an associate member, there's some advertising with logos and things like that at this conference sponsorships that you can do too. And then you can speak at those conferences and network. So here's just an array of things that I pulled off the internet that land banks in Michigan are doing. So they're doing a lot of outreach around contractors, home ownership. They have programs for like mowing in neighborhoods and gardens, and then open houses, of course. So our particular land bank serves all of Calhoun County, and we work to support the revitalization of communities in that county. This is our timeline. I think a lot of folks, as Brian said, want to go from 0 to 50 immediately in the land bank world, and you don't have to do that. You can do whatever works for your community. So we formed in 2007, and we spent a lot of time doing demolition. We were having 400 tax foreclosed properties a year that were coming to us, and so there was just a lot of property management. Now we're working really closely with neighborhoods. We're doing new programming. We're doing infill housing, rehabilitation. So we've kind of changed our mission-based both on our inventory and our community needs. So right now we have about 750 properties in our inventory. We used to have 1,300, so it's quite a reduction. Most of those are vacant residential lots that are in their form after demolition, but we do have some significant industrial sites, mostly in the city of Albion, and we have some commercial buildings. So this is like, how do you fund your land bank? So we fund our land bank through a lot of grants. We also have support from the treasurer's office and property sales, but everything below the blue line is something that we're doing right now with funding from either the WKKF Kellogg Foundation is a local philanthropist. We work with LISC, the State Land Bank, My Neighborhood, and then we have a significant EPA grant for brownfield assessment. And that's actually our third grant with EPA. And we run a coalition with our county. So we serve as the county rep, but we have the cities of Albion and Battle Creek as part of that coalition. So how do we manage all of that land? We've created programming over the years, and this is just our top 6 programs. And I'm just going to take you through some quick pictures of what that might look like. So in the activation world of land banking, not all properties can have a house, not all properties can be sold to a neighbor. They might need an interim use. And so some of the things that we have done, we do run a neighborhood maintenance program. We have a T-ball memorial park in the city of Albion. And then we have some pop-up art that we replace yearly or when it needs it, just as a way to make those lots look less vacant, to less distraction from the neighborhood. And then we do run a side lot program. This is kind of like the best that could happen in a side lot program. The neighbor buys the house, the neighbor builds a garage. You know, there's investment on that. And we've been revamping what our side lot program looks like. With tax foreclosure, there's not always clean title. So we would sell these properties for $200 without title, which is not really what we wanted to do, but we just didn't have the funding. And lately, we've been piloting with the support of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, title and lot combination in our side lot program. And it's been really popular, and staff is able to administer that, so the homeowner does not have to go through all of those hoops. Here's an example of our development programs. This really is that house. I know it looks like a magazine, but it really is that house. So on Parish, two of them next door. Sorry, Chris and I know each other for a long time. So anyways, in this program, we sell a structure to somebody who wants to rehab it. They have a year to do it. They almost always take longer, and that's absolutely fine as long as they're showing that they are moving forward in their program and their project. So here's the transform this home. And then this is a transform this commercial property where a old hotel was turned into a mini storage unit just outside the city of Albion. This property up here, the adjacent one, it was two friends that purchased those. We removed 200 tires from that site one day, and they helped us. And then they each rehabbed their home at the same time. It was almost really rebuilding their houses. So when we talk about housing and where it goes in neighborhoods and how you handle that conversation, our most in-depth work has been with our Washington Heights neighborhood funded through the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. In 2021, our board of directors established an advisory committee. We had a grant of 200,000. 500,000. And we did not want to go into the neighborhood and say, this is what we think you need. We wanted them to tell us what they thought they needed. So we started that advisory committee. We actually took nominations. We walked the whole neighborhood, left flyers in people's doors. We had a selection committee who appointed the advisory committee members, and we got to work. So we had 257 properties in this one neighborhood planning council, which is a lot. And the first year, we really did a lot of homework with them. How did we get so many? Why did we demolish those? What does the city zoning, planning, historical district, how does that impact our neighborhood? And once we moved past that, we really got into the land reuse strategy, which is a disposition plan for every property that the land bank owns. Some of them went into beautification. Some of them went into that side lot program that I told you about, where we are now paying for title work and then combining those lots. In beautification, we have a garden lot here on the far, well, my right or left. They're buying everything in orange and blue, and then we're doing a lease with an option to purchase so that they don't have to purchase it all at one time. Our board just approved that last week, the week before. And so this farm here is Sunlight Gardens. They've been established on this property for quite a long time. This area, this whole black base in orange, it has a lot of dumping. It's really difficult to keep up with. So we have done some site clearance for them. We purchased the 2 blue properties from the city, and that's all included in that lease. And it was supported by the Washington Heights Neighborhood Advisory Committee. In the middle here, we have a food truck design that's across the street from one of our major parks that holds a lot of festivals. One of the big issues is food trucks come, people come, and there's no place for everybody to park or get that food. So the city of Battle Creek helped us work with Michigan State to do a design here for a food truck. So we're going to bid this out and see how much it costs. But the park is just to the north, and so this would be one space that everybody could come. And then the space in the middle could be used for food cart vendors or other uses that support that vision. And then we also did a rock the block with Habitat, 90 volunteers, 20 project sites. One day, they just read another grant for site clearance money because it was a lot. And then housing. So on the far left, we have the Washington Heights United Methodist Church project. We assisted with land. We sold them land, but we also did technical assistance. So sometimes your partners in your community may not know how to go and get a variance from the city because their lot's an inch too short. So that's what we did for them. We helped them with title work, we helped them with environmental assessments, and then we also helped them get through that planning and zoning process at the city of Battle Creek. They have just constructed their first house on that, so that's very exciting. They expect to do 17. Our team has also been working with the Battle Creek Area Association of Realtors to do outreach around home ownership. There's a new home ownership video that's now available to our community, and we attend basically events within the community as part of the Battle Creek Area Association of Realtors. And then we are also working on a housing counseling agreement with a nonprofit to divide up our county to provide that housing counseling. And then last but not least, because the community adopted a land reuse strategy and told us where they wanted their houses to go, we applied for My Neighborhood dollars and are going to be starting construction of 4 houses within this neighborhood. We've got the 2 at the top, which are 3 or 4 bedroom, look very similar to other houses in the community. We purchased the designs from the Home Builders Association, so it's a little bit cheaper, and we have a relationship with them, so we can partner with other developers who may want to use these designs. And then we have a single story, because we just do not have a lot of single story in our communities. And a lot of folks want to stay in their neighborhood, but they don't want to live in that big 2-story house anymore. So this offers another choice for those folks. And so this is just, I wanted to highlight this initiative because it's been really cool and it's not something that you really think about with the Land Bank Authority. So my team over there runs a Calhoun Builders Connection meetup group. So every 4th Friday, there's breakfast, there's a speaker, there's networking. And really one of the main goals was to get folks in our community licensed to bid on our projects. So to date, we have had 5 members licensed since April of 2023. There's smiling pictures up there. And one of them has decided that their farm to do development in is Albion. And so he has constructed this duplex on property that we formerly owned. He's hiring other contractors from the Calhoun Builders Connection. He's bidding on our projects and he's encouraging others to bid on our projects. So when Tanisha said earlier that we've had 2 classes on how to bid, we've done a webinar. One of the things that we have found is that folks they don't understand how to bid on government projects and they just need a little bit of help. So at our meetups, we often have representation from the city of Battle Creek, from Community Action, and it's a place that people can come and ask questions and learn and meet, the person that's going to be reviewing that bid so that they have a base, they understand, oh, I can go and ask questions, or this is how I ask a question. So this has been a super cool project. But also, I think it's going to just keep growing in our community because other people are owning it. We don't have to own it all. Some of our contractors are owning it. They're talking, they're making sure that folks have support when they're going to take that builder's test, which is a huge test and difficult. So where are we going? We're still working on this housing rehabilitation stabilization. We started a second neighborhood outreach project in the Post Franklin neighborhood because they liked what we did in Washington Heights and invited us to come over and start that work. And that workforce development is a huge piece that we're continuing to foster those contractors. And then land disposition. I found it a lot easier now that we have a land reuse strategy in the Washington Heights neighborhood for us to have conversations around how this land can be used and how if it's supported by that community. And so we're trying to do that in our other core neighborhoods where we own significant properties. And that is it for me. That's our whole team there and some of our partners. And I'm going to turn it over to Hope.
Amazing. These larger, urban land banks have been my goal. Like go back 4 years ago, Cass County Land Bank, all we did was figure out how to take properties that didn't sell at the second tax sale and get them back on the tax roll. That is literally all we did. No revenue, no grants. We just figured out that was all we were doing. Now fast forward to now, we, as a rural land bank, we do have our challenges. Natural limitations in time, staffing and resources. Those are some of our biggest issues. But we're going to show you today how we have bridged that gap by forming some really important and strong partnerships to do what we do. Do we have a staff? No. Do we have an executive director? No. I am the county treasurer and I'm the chairman of the land bank. The manager for the village of Cassopolis is the vice chair of our land bank. And we have three other board members. That's it. So we have, those limitations as far as time and staff and resources. But we're happy to share with you again, how we've made some strong connections and collaborations in our community to make this happen. Want to introduce yourself?
I'm Emily, I'm the village manager in Cassopolis. And it probably was about 4 years ago when Hope approached me and asked me if I wanted to be a part of the land bank. And part of that was because Hope did a great job of trying to figure out what land banks could actually do. And she said, I know we can do more. So let's start building a team of people that can do more with the resources that are available to us. And so that was really where that started, was building a team for the land bank itself that all had the same goal. How can we serve our residents in a better way? And then the next step of that was, how do we put rules in place to protect what the land bank can currently do and still move it forward, right? With maybe a little more flexibility than what was there before. So those were our first two steps. And then, of course, anyone who's involved in land bank work understands that when the state land bank said, hey, by the way, if you're a land bank, we have money, we're going to give it to you. We're like, all right, well, let's figure out what's next. And so that's really the seed money that started many of the things that we started working on.
Well, we're going to highlight some of the projects that we're currently working on or that we just recently finished. This one is in the city of Dowagiac. The city of Dowagiac purchased this former school building after a series of failed redevelopment attempts by outside developers because of the level of blight this building exhibited. It was vacant for more than a decade, and it's in a residential neighborhood, and it's on a prominent location in a heavily trafficked state highway. The city had already begun the process to divide the property into 6 buildable lots. They wanted to put residential property, 6 houses on that property. They had already done the division. And then our land bank partnered with the city to bring this vision to life. Utilizing round 2 blight elimination funds, we facilitated the demolition of the structure and covered all costs associated with the hazardous material abatement, paving the way for much needed new housing that is currently underway. So this is City of Dowagiac, and we have her here with us today. This is such a success story. They're all 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes. And again, there's 3 of them have already started, the other 3 real soon in May. So this is a great success story in the city of Dowagiac.
And I do want to just add that the collaboration with the city was really what made this happen, right? Like we mentioned, there is no staff except for us on top of our full-time jobs, right? And so to be able to do a project like this really relies heavily on the city taking up a lot of the work that needs to be done to make this happen, to flow through the grant. So I think our biggest point that we're going to hit home through all of this is the collaboration that you absolutely have to have when you are a small land bank, when you don't have the staff, when you don't have some of those resources. So this next project started really with our brownfield. So land banks also can partner and work with brownfields. So this came in through our EDC and brownfield, of which Hope and I both participate in as well. And really it is in Edwardsburg. All of the neighbors, the property owners, all trying to figure out a way, how do we get rid of this building? What do we do? So started with EDC brownfield. So we saw an opportunity from the land bank side to submit this project for blight removal. We put all of the paperwork together in order to do that, apply for that program. It was really our priority site. As soon as Hope, submitted that grant opportunity, Eagle came to us and said, hey, you know what? We'll help with part of this. No, wait, we'll help with all of it. So the story behind that is really that, again, that same collaboration, working with all of the different partners, departments, anybody who might be a resource, because while this didn't end up necessarily being a land bank project, we still believe that, you know, our job was to draw the line and make the connections. This was done, is removed. The neighborhoods are happy, you know, all of the things. So again, that ability to make sure everyone knows what you're working on or what your goals are helps you accomplish this in ways that might not necessarily be what you think your land bank is doing.
We probably had about 6 meetings, Zoom meetings with the Brownfield Group out of Kalamazoo, Department of Eagle, the Village of Edwardsburg, the township, county commissioners, the land bank, and the treasurer. We probably had about, probably half a dozen meetings before we eventually got to where this was cleaned up. This is a history museum right next door, so they were desperate to get to see this, the underground storage. If you didn't know, UST's underground storage tank. This was a former gas station. So they tried to use it for a flea market for many years, but ultimately that was a barrier to development because of those underground storage tanks. This is an example of 3 of 20 demolitions we've done over the last 2 years with the blight elimination funding round 1, 2, and 3. Oh, I'll go back. And many of these demolitions were privately owned homes, because our land bank inventory is more like 7 parcels, not hundreds. So to be able to use this funding that the state land bank was brought to us, that was guaranteed 200 in round 1 and 500 in round 3, we had to think outside of the box. Our land bank inventory was small. We reached out to a lot of the local units to see what properties they had. And then after that, a lot of them had blight issues in their townships or in their villages, but they knew that what's the traditional way? The local unit will do the demolition. They have to upfront that money for the demo, and then they charge the homeowner. Homeowner doesn't pay it, it ends up on the tax bill. Then it rolls delinquent, and then I have it as the county treasurer. So I'm trying to collect that over the next 2 years. Maybe they still don't pay. Then I'm trying to sell this at a tax sale for a vacant lot for a lot more than I can sell it for. That minimum bid is way too high. So it's a really broken model. So we were able to partner with our local units to a lot of these properties, as you can see, were fire damaged. They had code enforcement. Some of them had court order demolitions. So we were able to partner with our local units, still utilize those dollars. It didn't result in a lien for those homeowners, but they did not have to come up with the money up front. The local unit didn't have to, the homeowner didn't have to. It's a 7-year forgivable lien.
So another partner in our room is the Village of Marcellus. So in their downtown, they have a tailgater bar that's been vacant for quite some time. Has a few issues, as you can see in the pictures, the least of which are some water damage, some mold.
That's not grass, yeah.
Some grass growing in, right? So it has a few things. The village had already started, knowing that they really wanted to keep that building and they needed to do some stabilization on it. They had started that process themselves. And then when the land bank had the ability to apply for funds for stabilization, this was a great partnership project again. So again, the Village of Marcellus had some of their own dollars go in. We were able to partner that with some state land bank funds for the stabilization of this key property right in the middle of their downtown. And kind of honor you say that we show that the Barton Group is on there. So the Barton Group works with the Village of Marcellus as well to kind of help facilitate this grant. Some of these are stabilization and rehab projects are a little tricky to work through, and you want to make sure that, like any of our grants, that we're complying with all the rules and regulations so that you get paid on the backside. And so, they're doing a great job with that. This project is well underway right now. And I don't know, Jacqueline, do we have an estimated time for completion on this?
We do, and I reviewed it the other day and I don't know what it is.
Coming soon. This is my favorite project that we're working on right now, partially because the building shown on the left is my old building and my old office. So this former bank building, which was turned into our village municipal offices and police department on the top floor. It had medical offices on the main floor. When we built our new building and moved there at the end of 2020, we sold this property to someone with the intent who was going to build apartments on there. Fast forward a few years, that didn't happen. They were looking to get rid of it. It continued to deteriorate. It had some other issues going on. I approached the land bank and said, hey, I think this would be a really great project. And on top of that, we could create some housing. I had done before we moved out of this building. I had a housing study done, as well as a draft plan for the upper floor for housing units with the intent that that's what it would be someday. And so we were awarded funds by the state land bank to purchase this building back and to rehabilitate it. This project is well underway. We're getting awfully close to sending it out for bid. The upper floor will be 7 new apartment units at 80% AMI for 5 years. And so this is such a capstone corner of our village, right? When you come in, this is the corner. And to the left on the bottom picture, you can see our county courthouse. So Hope's office now overlooks this, but for 20 years, that building remained shuttered. So when the county built new offices, they shuttered that building that had some mold issues and a few other things, and then couldn't really decide what they wanted to do with it. Happy to say that this fall, they reopened it for the county administrative services, which adds to that hub, a great downtown feel. And so now being able to address this other corner, provide housing on the top, some commercial services on the bottom, is a really exciting opportunity to do some good stuff in the village. Chill is another program that we're partnering with Mishta on through the land bank. So there's a couple opportunities with Chill, and so we decided that on some of these recently demo properties that we were working on, we wanted to try to use that program to build some additional housing. So we're moving. It is like some programs, it is challenging to get from ground zero to what you're trying to accomplish, but we have great partners. Chris and Julie chatted a little bit earlier about how some of these programs work and what the requirements are. But the great thing about this is that this is infill housing. We can keep the price point down a little bit on these. This particular picture is a good model of what those houses will look like. This is a house that we put up through the village used through the Mishta Mod program, but it kind of gave us an opportunity to see what it was like to work with modular homes. We believe that will be a great way for us to move forward with this program, and are looking forward to set 2 houses on infill lots where we did demos by the end of this year. Next is our CEDM fellow, Keontae Buck. So again, a lot of partnership, and he's in the back of the room.
He's here.
So we are so excited about this partnership. The village had applied for a fellow through CEDM years ago, and our former fellow Alexis is sitting in the back doing all the good housing work for us as well. We have been lobbying for another fellow since then, approached the land bank about partnering with that. So as you can probably tell, the village and the Cass County Land Bank have created a pretty strong partnership. We also have Heather sitting in the back, who has been a shared employee between us as well. And so we decided to apply for a CEDM fellow jointly to help us move some of these initiatives forward. Like anything, capacity is a challenge. Again, we don't have a staff. So how do we keep rolling these programs and doing the good work with limited hands? And so this was a great opportunity for us to do that. Keontae is a local to Cassopolis. He worked for the village while he was going to college. And then, he applied and was successful in his opportunity and started with us in January, and we will have him for 15 months. So if you're not familiar with the CEDAM program, I would encourage you to look into that. It's a great program. Pennies on the dollars to each of us in order to have him there 15 months, but what a great asset to have a full-time employee and grow our own network of people right here in this state.
The Cass County Land Bank Authority is also a subrecipient of My Hope funds. So we were awarded $975,000 to do roofs, windows, doors, furnaces in our county. This is an example, one of the roofs that you could mow at one point that we were able to replace. Overall, we were able to help 43 homeowners in our county. And you can see the number of roofs and doors and windows and insulation. Again, we do not have staff for our land bank. So this was my office absorbing this work, additional work, but it was so well worth it. We actually have more applicants than funding. So, yeah, we got to keep going. Cass County has the CDBG block grant, Cass County. So they had outsourced this to one of our local units to administer this grant. But because of all of our experience, the land bank's experience with the My Hope program, we gained so much experience that we've now taken that back on at the county level. So this is something that Keontae is going to be able to help with. It's, it's usually under $100,000 that we're doing emergency homeowner repairs each year. But I'm happy to say that our land bank is now doing this good work as well.
We always like to end with just kind of making note of some of the partners. And while it's this is just a small list because the list is actually exhaustive. One of the things that we want to point out is if you don't know the names of some of these people in the rooms, if you hadn't met Chris before, if you hadn't met Julie before, I think Teresa already left from CEDAM, but if you hadn't met her before, take a moment and introduce yourselves. Tell them what you're working on. Stop them from eating their lunch like I did today to hit them up for some things, right? Because at the end of the day, they really are here to help. That's what they want to do. They're amazing resources. These are, again, just a handful of the partners that we've used from the land bank side. We're always happy to share any information or best practices that we use. I think our biggest goal as a land bank, while we're not quite as structured and we don't have the kind of lots there, but it's the ability to be able to pivot and really provide to our residents whatever we can in the best way possible with whatever resources become available. And so that asterisk at the side of everyone in this room's name that says other duties as assigned, right? We take that to heart. We know that's how everyone has to operate. And so I don't think we're telling anyone here anything you don't already know, but I think that has been and remains hope and my goal. And I think that's why we have such a solid partnership and opportunity to continue to grow, is because it is just about always looking for where is the opportunity for us to do more for the residents.
And we don't have a housing agency in Cass County. So
That'd be great too.
that would be great. So that's another reason why we're filling a gap there. That's the end of our presentation, though. If you guys have questions for any of us, I'm sure that Krista and Brian would both be willing to answer any questions you have about land banking. I do recognize that a lot of people don't know what is a land bank. So I'm glad you addressed that today. But does anyone have any questions?
Other than that, we know the sun is shining and we're keeping you from that.
That's right, that's right. Thank you very much.
Well, when I first started with Vista, I did some site visits to Cass County and was just super impressed with how strategic all of the groups that are doing work there are. I was just really blown away, and I talk about you guys. So if you get phone calls, take up my time, I'm gonna have people taking up your time as well. And then, the Calhoun County Land Bank was doing the exact same thing in, 2004, 5, 6, when they didn't have any staff. Vista was their first paid staff, and really, that wasn't borrowed staff from the treasurer's office in like 2010.
I was borrowed staff from the
She
treasurer's
was
office.
still borrowed staff,
Yeah.
yeah, for a while.
Yeah, I worked for the treasurer and the land bank for a while.
And the cities, like we started an NSP2 grant together at the city, and the city largely was the financial administrator for the grant. We had all the expertise, and by the time we got done, it was sort of flip-flopped. And then thereafter, Cities just relied on land banks to be that strategic partner that built expertise around how to handle these problems. And it was like we got to outsource all of that, right? Still stay connected as an important partner. One of the things that happens with land banks, I'm just throwing this out there because this is invariably an issue, is that land banks often end up being misunderstood. Even by the municipalities that used to have to do their work, right? And so you have residents that will complain about a problem property in their neighborhood or a piece of blight. And because the land bank took title of that property, and because now you have processes that allow for, to bring other land use tools to bear on solving these situations, people don't know all that. And so we often hammer our land banks or hold them accountable for problems that they literally just decided to take those on. And I don't know, it's been a big deal in Battle Creek because folks if they don't have that history, they don't know that really they were built and created so that we had tools to deal with these problems. And if you didn't have them tackling these issues, the problems would be twice, 3 times, 4 times as bad. And you'd be dealing with them in your, the municipal government instead of the home. So just throwing that out there.
Very good point.
And the other thing about the Michigan Land Bank Association is that we all work collectively. So if Hope called me and said, hey, I need a contract for blah, 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 we just shoot it off.
I have done that often.
We do not, and nothing is a secret. We're super transparent. If somebody needed somebody that is, is on, or even just considering becoming a land bank, we will pretty much drop everything and just shoot it out to them. We're not a secretive society of, so we're pretty open and transparent about all of that. So we'll help when the need is there. And you can see CCLBA, and I was cracking up.
Yeah, that's right. I said, you guys are I'm Cass County Land Bank, you're Calhoun County Land Bank, all your documents match me already. I don't have to change it. No.
That's great. That was funny.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your time.
That concludes. That concludes our day. Thank you so much for taking time to sit with us, to eat with us, and talk with us today. If you want to get included or participate in the Regional Housing Partnership, please let me know. We'd love to get you in the loop and do more events like this and talk more about how we can work collaboratively as a region to solve our housing issues. So drive safe and feel free to take some snacks with you. All right, take care. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
It's a work and hopefully started with us. It's been a pleasure. I know the